Chargers at Panthers. Somebody's got to have the Bryce discussion. I know I will, at least, because we have to. But is he part of your matchup that matters? What do you got in this one?
No, the matchup that matters, and it's something going back to what we were talking about last week even, was the Carolina linebackers and pretty much their front seven in general against Gus Edwards, and more importantly, J.K. Dobbins, who I was hoping was going to have a career resurgence or revival, battling back from all of these injuries, now in a very run-heavy offense. As a whole this season, I've talked about that a lot with Fox, just how I hope that this is the year for J.K. Dobbins. Well, after the first game, it certainly looked like it could be, because he had 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, this guy was the Chargers offense. And Carolina defense as a whole last week, they let up 180 rushing yards. So this just seems to be like another really favorable matchup for J.K. Dobbins and or Gus Edwards. I mean, Carolina ranks 16th in versus running backs in terms of grade last week.
Yep.
But they ranked 29th in EPA per play allowed against running backs.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not a good scene for Carolina in so many ways. But I think that, there's nothing more demoralizing than a team that can just run the ball down your throats. And that's exactly what the Chargers are going to try to do because of Jim Harbaugh. It's just, and not to mention Jim Harbaugh and his scheme, it kind of splits between inside zone and man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are some of the worst grades in Carolina's run defense against certain formations. And over 77% of Carolina's snaps against inside zone go for a negative grade.
I was going to say, and it's only getting tougher with Derek Brown out, right, for the season.
Yes, so and now, right, exactly. So now you get rid of your best player, not only on defense, but probably on the team at this point.
Yeah.
And who is a really good run defender.
Right.
And I don't know which way this defense turns, to be honest. It's just, it's going to be some real tough scenes this season for Carolina.
Yeah. Carolina's in a really tough spot. And I don't want to, pile on, but unfortunately, the way it looked versus New Orleans and the fact that your best player is now out for the year, I'm worried about the morale of this team dropping very quickly, because if signs at least don't look better, if they don't have competitive play within the next, I would say 4 or 5 weeks, I'm really worried about a first-time head coach in Dave Canales being able to sort of like rally the troops here, because there will be guys in that locker room that will question what's going on there. And it's natural if things aren't going really well. My matchup that matters for this game is Bryce Young, but particularly it's Bryce Young versus him being in a deficit, because you mentioned, okay, like not having Derek Brown, not being able to defend exactly what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. I don't think the Chargers are going to be a team that's, scoring extremely quickly, and all of a sudden the Carolina Panthers are down like 3 scores in the first like 10 minutes of the game or something. I guess it kind of depends what kind of pride and competitiveness the defense has when they show up. But I eventually think the Chargers are going to gain some sort of double-digit lead on this team. Mm-hmm. Is Bryce Young even in a mental space right now to play well enough to consistently push the ball down the field to overcome being in a deficit and actually be a comeback quarterback? Because when you look at it last week, it was bad. It was really bad. Throws of 10 or more yards down the field, 5 of 14, just 113 yards, 2 interceptions. On throws of 20 or more yards down the field, 0 for 4, and that was where one of his interceptions came as well. So Bryce, I went back and I watched his film because we're talking about it for NFL Stock Exchange as well. He looks mentally broken. A lot of what you liked at Alabama just is not there for him. And I'm worried about this team, because if things start to go off the rails, I don't really know who saves them at this point. I don't, because I would have maybe said, hey, perhaps J.C. Horn and Derek Brown and Jiro Evero obviously still being there as the defensive coordinator, like maybe they can rally around the defense and just be a defensive team and play tough every week. Now that you're down Derek Brown, I don't know if you could even do that. So the matchup that matters to me is Carolina is going to be down at some point in this game. Is Bryce Young capable of being a come-from-behind type of quarterback? Because it's not just in this game either. He is going to have to become this type of player all season long if they're going to remain competitive. And I think this matchup is going to be a really, really important one. But who is your plus factor in this matchup?
Well, it goes along with that, and it's an aspect of Bryce Young's game, and it's his time to throw, his average time to throw. And what's interesting to me, and looking all of this stuff up, especially after week one, you wanted to see improvement from the offensive line in particular, because it was so horribly graded and run last year.
Right.
This year, there is some incremental improvement, at least in week one. We saw them kind of middle in the pack in terms of pass blocking grades at number 14. That, though, is really challenged and contested by the fact that Bryce Young has an average time to throw of over 4 seconds. He ranks 28th in the league for the 28th, fastest, or one of the slowest. And that just doesn't help these guys at all. Pass blocking in this day and age, it's not meant to be done for over 4 seconds. That's just not realistic against these defensive fronts that you go against in the NFL, and the sophistication of all these defenses and the pressure schemes.
Yeah.
So holding on to the ball, it makes me think that Bryce Young is still obviously not comfortable within Dave Canales' system yet. He's in his head too much. And going back to what you were just talking about with the confidence, he doesn't have it. He's not comfortable in any stretch of the imagination. And it's one of those things where it's feeding off of each other, where he's holding the ball too long, so his offensive line can't hold as long, and then he's not trusting his offensive line, and then he's holding the ball more because he's thinking more about it. It's just a whole mess. And I really, really, really hope that we can see some improvement over these next few weeks, because you're right, not only from the sense that this team could give up, but David Tepper could give up. And we have seen him be very trigger happy with coaching changes and all of that. And it doesn't seem realistic to keep cycling coaches in and out, but we also haven't seen them be able to kind of stick it out and really try to work with head coaches. I think that also comes with being a first-time head coach. I don't necessarily know that was the best course of action, but here we are.
Yeah. No, and I think that no matter what, like, Bryce has to get a go-to guy that he trusts in the pass game, whether it is Xavier Legette, whether it's Jonathan Mingo, whether it's Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, like whatever, whether they were there last year or this year. I feel like he's got to be able to have a receiver that he could go to, especially in, again, those moments where there's pressure, the time to throw could be up, he's not holding the ball as long, he's able to get it out of his hands to his go-to guy. He's got to find that. Plus factor in this game for me is Justin Herbert. Only 144 passing yards in week one, but we know how good Justin Herbert is. And when you look at this Carolina Panthers defense, you mentioned it, the stats, when you go, oh, well, according to week one, it's not going to look pretty because they got blown out against the Saints. Derek Carr was the highest graded passer in the NFL last week when going up against the Carolina Panthers defense. And so that's what makes this a potential recipe for disaster is I think Justin Herbert's in for sort of a bounce back week as well. So if Justin Herbert's firing all cylinders, if the offensive line's playing well, if J.K. Dobbins has another good game, I think this one could get away from Carolina pretty quickly. That's why we need Bryce to be able to play better from behind. That's really what I'm looking forward, because I think that is going to happen.